Okay, so what I want to look at, I usually have, let's see if it's in here, more parts. That's called come on. I think I already have it in Python, so we're gonna look at it, how it was converted into Python, so that you can see how it runs with an inner loop. If I can ever get it. Takes me twice long to see here. Maybe I have it here. Chapter 5. What did I call that? Oh, well, we may code it ourselves because I don't. Nested loop, that's probably it. Maybe. No, that's a different one. Okay, so if we've got, and you kind of need to see how to do this anyway. If we've got a flow chart like this, and we want to do it in Python, of course, this is going to mean that we won't probably have time to do some of those other problems. This is, let me put the flow chart up there. Actually. Okay, who understands this? Who would like to go through the Python in it? Does it help you for me to build this, or do you want to go to the coding problems, which will help you the most?
Can we go through the coding? Can you put this on?
Yeah, then I can put this up if you want. Okay. All right. So we'll go on now. I still didn't get to the for loop. Let me at least show the difference in the for loop. And those are important too, to go through mistakes that you make doing that kind of logic. Be sure you go through that in the chapter. Where's the next one? Okay, yeah, that's still testing. Okay, there we go. All right, so in the for loop, you still have to initialize, test, and alter the loop. It's just the same you do with the while loop, but it's all done in one statement instead of doing it in 3 separate statements. So in a for loop, this is the pseudocode reference of a for loop. It starts with a for, and the loop control variable, you set it right here equal to what its initial value is to be. And then you say that it's going to loop through the final value. So you give it what you want it to stop at, and here's where you tell it how much to alter it. If it's +1, so you can only use a for loop with a counter. Okay, you cannot use it. You can use it with decrement, increment, but you can't use it with like setting it to an initial ZZZ or something, because it won't do that in a for loop. A for loop is designed for a specific number of times that you're going to go through a loop. So in like an array that we're going to do later, we'll use for loops a lot. I still let students use while loops because some never do quite understand for loops. But if you can get it, it's a lot less code because it's one line. Okay. Yes.
So,
yeah. Well, if you tell it here, you can tell it either you want to add 1 each time or subtract 1 each time. So it's in this step, and you can use a variable name that you've initialized it. You can use a constant there. You don't have to use an actual number, but the constant has to be initialized to a variable. I'm sorry, to a specific number. And it can only be integer numbers, but you know, integer numbers can be negative. So you can have it decrement instead of increment. But you could have it step, like if we were wanting to get to every even number, we'd add 2 each time, right? Instead of 1. So we'll see this work. Then you do your statements that you want to happen as long as that, so that's the body of the loop right here, okay? So down here is an example. It says if you're doing a while loop, it would look like this if it was a counter control loop. Set count equal to 0, while count is less than or equal to 3, output hello, count equals count plus 1 in while. Okay, and over here, this is would do the same thing in a for loop. For count equal to 0, so here we've started with our control variable named count. We've initialized it to 0, and we're saying do it until 3, until it's 3. Yes?
Yeah, so basically, we could just set the count equal to 0, like initialize it like a top of it, like count.
No, you don't want to do that in a for loop because there's no reason to do that.
Okay.
Now you could set you could set like your increment as a constant, and you'd put that name right there. Like you could call it loop number. Loop number, set it equal to 3, and then you would say 0 to loop number. Okay, and then it says step, so increment, but you won't use the word step in Python, but you do in pseudocode. Output hello, and then in for. So it's going to output hello 3 times here and also here. Okay? So the variable count is initialized to 0. The count variable is compared to the limit value 3. While count is less than or equal to 3, the loop body executes. As the last statement in the loop execution, the value of count increases by 1. After the increase, the comparison to the limit value is made again. So a while loop can always be used instead of a for loop, but when a loop's execution is based on a loop control variable progressing from a known starting value to a known ending value in equal steps, the for loop provides a convenient shorthand. So it is easy for others to read. And because the loop control variable's initialization, testing, and alteration are all performed in one location, you are less likely to leave out one of their crucial elements. So, although the for loops are commonly used to control execution of a block of statements a fixed number of times, the programmer doesn't need to know the starting, final, or set value for the loop control variable when the program is written. For example, any of the values might be entered by the user or might be the result of a calculation. So what it's saying is you can still ask for the value of count up at the top. You can say input count, and so that's what, and see how they increment counter. This is in C++, Java, and C#. You can say count plus plus means increment it by 1 in those languages. Both the while loop and the for loop are examples of what's called pre-test loops. In other words, it tests to see if it wants to do it again before it actually does it. That's why I was telling you there are some languages that have do, until, and they're different. Okay, so let's see. We're not gonna talk about post-test loops because we're not gonna use those. Those are called do-whiles. There are languages. If you're a programming major and you're gonna do Java, C++, you may use a do-while, but Python doesn't use a do-while. And so the difference is it tests the loop at the bottom. See, it says do the loop, and then at the bottom, it tests to see if it wants to do it again. So that's called post-test, okay? All right, so let's get over then to the coding problems, because we do have one on a for loop. Okay, in the coding, this one should be pretty straightforward. Did anyone have a problem with this one? The counter control while loop, because we won't have time to do all of them. So I'm trying to see this one. These are basically the same, but one's controlled by a counter and one's controlled by a sentinel value. What's a sentinel value? a decision. It's like it's a variable that it's not the actual decision. It's a value of a variable that determines whether you want to continue the loop or not. So it's kind of like an end of file. Are you done? Are you going to do any more input? Okay. So a counter control is controlled by whether you're going to add another number and go through it a specific number of times. So then the for loop, here's the one that we'll start with this one. If we have time, we can go back to the others. So this one is a for loop. Okay, so in this lab, the completed program should print the numbers 0 through 10 along with their values multiplied by 2 and by 10. You should accomplish this using a for loop instead of a counter-controlled while loop. So they want to see if you understand a for loop. Not that you couldn't do it with a while loop, and if you were in idle, it would be correct. But you know, in Python, they ask, or I'm sorry, in MindTap, they ask specifically for a for loop. So I'm assuming they won't give you 100% unless you use a for loop. Okay. All right. So it's not that it won't work with a while loop. All right. So here, what they're doing is they've got constants, which they didn't use all caps, which I would prefer they did. But these are headings to the final report that's printed out. So they're saying you're going to print the number, then you're going to print multiplied by the answer for multiplied by 2 and the answer for multiplied by 10. And they already have, I thought they had your print statements already down here. Am I missing it or is it not scrolling down? Does yours have, when y'all open it, does it have, it doesn't have your print statements. Okay. Print 0 through 10 multiplied by 2 and by 10. It's saying that's the heading. Okay, it's got two constants. Num loop start equals 0, num loop end equals 10. Okay, so here again, I'm going to try to open this in idle so you can see it better. But it should work either way. If you can't get it to. So you should be able to type this in. Oops, I think I'm in the wrong. You should be able to type it into your MindTap and make sure it works, but I can enlarge everything this way. This one's called multiply, I think. Is this what this one's called? Multiply. What is it? New multiply. Oh, new multiply. Okay, so new multiply. Okay. Okay. So in this one, all we're going to do is use this for loop. And you'll notice in Python, we use something called range. And that's something that it didn't show you inside the chapter either. You would have to look it up on W3 Schools or Python at that python.org to know how to code it in Python, right? Because it didn't tell us that. So here in Python, this part's already there, this part's already there, and this one. This is what you need to code underneath the comment that says, the comment that says write your loop here, right? Isn't that what it says? Write your for loop here. So your for loop, they're using, okay, they came up with this. They didn't tell us to use this variable, I don't think. Did they tell you over here what the names of your variables should be? No. They do in the next one. Okay. All right, so you're going to say for number counter is your counter controlled variable. In, and this is a Python word, and this is a Python word. Range simply means if it's between the num loop start, which is 0, and the num loop end. So there's a comma between the ranges. So it says for number counter in range num loop start to num loop end. Now something else it doesn't have here is the initial value, right? So how do we know what number counter is? Python, there again, defaults it to 0. Unless you, so you would have to say number counter equals 1 if you wanted it to start with 1. And then it adds 1. This is the step 1 each time through. So that's how you write a for loop in Python. And you would have had to look it up. So I just gave it to you. So it would, because it doesn't tell you that in the book, you don't learn how to do a Python for loop. Now, you could also, in the range, you could have just, instead of using constants, of course, you could say 0, 10, right? Or you could say, if you said 1, 10, it would automatically initialize number counter to that 1. So we can try it. We'll go up here and we'll change this in a minute after you get that typed in. So they're using this as their variable names. By 10, by 2. That's their result of number counter times 10. So the first time through, it should be 0 and 0, right? So it's going to be by 10 and by 2 should both be 0. And you see what the print statement's doing? It's using this, and it's saying print number plus number counter, print multiplied by 2, and multiplied by 10, by 10. I don't know why they switched the order, because they ask it by 10 and by 2 up here. Uh-oh. Ooh, I don't know why that's doing that. Something in my chords today. Okay, tell me if you're still typing. Raise your hand if you're still typing. Okay.
I have a question. Like, so basically, what I kind of did was had numbers equal to like brackets 1 to 10, and then did the 4 as like numbers and numbers.
Did it give you 100%? Okay.
But I didn't really know how to do that, like range, like you did that right there.
Okay, so what did you do? You said right here.
It was, just like above numbers, just like brackets 1 to 10.
You used an array.
Yeah.
Oh, you weren't supposed to use an array yet.
I didn't know, but I just didn't know how to like.
Did you look it up or something?
Oh, it just made sense.
You used an array?
Yeah.
Because we
I
haven't
just
covered
thought, like,
arrays.
this function
I'm
that-
surprised it let you do that. And gave you 100%. I mean, yeah, let me see. Like,
And then I just,
did you
just
still have it up? Oh, you did it on that.
I didn't know how to bring it.
Yeah. This. Oh, I see what you did. Initialize.
Oh, for
Yeah, I'm trying to say this, like, I'm trying to start with it.
oh,
Like,
But it gave it to you like that. That's pretty cool. I'm surprised MindTap gives me.
where that's, you know,
Oh,
that's adding to. the
That's
result,
adding,
right?
no, it's adding to number count. Because see, it's actually testing for number counter, as long as number counter's in the range of 0 to 10. So you don't want to change your range,
Mhm.
right? But you want to increment number counter each time you go through the loop.
I think it just seemed confusing that
Yeah,
would be
that's-
included in the parentheses because it seems like. it would-
Yeah,
it's
that's
not gonna-
not number counter. But see, the way a for loop's set up, it's saying, yeah, and it's actually incrementing, yeah, number counter. So I don't know why it's included in the parentheses that way. That's just
So
Python.
you would probably put that outside of it.
I don't think that it would work syntactically. I think it'll give you an error. Okay, what Colin was saying, it didn't make as much sense because the +1 is inside the parentheses, so you would think maybe it's incrementing one of these, but this increment is incrementing number counter because that's our control variable, right? These are not control variables. But he was saying, okay, I wonder if it would work if you put the parentheses here and took this one off, but let's see.
It's not gonna count up on the number of stars, though, will it?
I don't think it will let us run it syntactically because I think Python, but we're going to try it. Yes, it gives you an error because Python doesn't understand that. So if you go here, what it's saying is that you're going to add 1 to number counter. You don't want to add it to your range values because then they would no longer be your beginning and ending.
Okay.
But I mean, I understand what you're saying. It looks like it's part of this range that you're incrementing the range, but it's part of the way a for loop is designed, that this part is the initialize and this part is the test and this part alters it. So it's still got the same 3 parts that a while loop does, but it's a shorthand way. Okay, like it was saying in our book. So Python, but every particular programming language does a for loop a little bit different, but they all have it as shorthand like that. It's all done in one statement, but syntactically, every programming language does it a tiny bit different. So if you understand what a for loop is, then you know that every language has that option. It's just that you have to look it up, how it does it in C++ and how it does it in Java, okay? So this is the way Python does but of course, Tyler did it a little different way. He initialized an array and did it, but we'll talk about that in the next chapter. So if I run this one, you should have, did anybody have trouble with theirs running? Okay, so, because if I run this one, it should print it just like this. Okay. And so instead of having to, so if I wanted to change what it says, number, then we put them all as a constant. So it says, so it's kind of like that quiz sheet did, you know, it used labels for what it was printing out. And that's what this one did. Now, when I was running it yesterday with another student, it was stopping at 9. I don't know why. I'll have to look at that. I'll have to tell him to look at this. Okay, so that's that one should have gave you 100%. Okay, let's go to the next one. The next one is using a while loop and break statement in Python. And see, a break statement, the thing about a break statement, it's not structurally correct, but I know Professor Dewey said in cyber, sometimes you need to use a break statement to break out of a certain troubleshooting script you've written. So what a break does is it doesn't wait till the test is false. It lets you break out of the loop at that time. And so structurally, that's not good coding, but in Python, it's used a lot. So here, you work with the same Python program you worked with in labs 5-1 and 5-3. As in those earlier labs, the completed program should print the numbers 0 through 10 along with their values multiplied by 2 and by 10. However, in this lab, you should accomplish this using a while loop with a break statement. So in this one, make sure that this file's open, write a while loop that uses the loop control variable to take on the values 0 through 10 and breaks when the loop control exceeds 10. In the body of the loop, you're going to multiply the value of the loop control variable by 2 and by 10 and output the result. Execute the program by clicking the run. Okay, so it wants us to use a break statement instead of testing the loop at the end. So break, that's what it does. You just put the word break and it does that. Let's go here, new list. So on this one, you're still going to go through, but it changed the control loop to 10. So that's the number of times that you're going to loop. And so here we initialize Oh, they are doing a do while. I was wrong. They do a do while by using a break in Python. So that means it's a post-test loop, right? So it's going to test the loop at the bottom. So we're going to initialize the counter to 1. And now there's a test that you can do with while that says while true. So that just simply says, while I haven't broke out of the loop, just keep, while I haven't told you to break out, just keep doing it. So here it says by 10, so it does the multiply, prints it out. Here's where it alters the counter, right here at the bottom of the loop. But then instead of letting the test be here, it says if number counter is greater than number loops, break. And, you know, that is not really done in any other language. It's a script programming way of doing a do while or a post-test loop. So it's testing the loop at the bottom, right? Instead of at the top. So it's saying while true, which is a condition that you could set. If I change this to false, it won't even go through the loop one time. If I say while false, we'll try that too here in just a minute. Okay, tell me when you're done typing. Or is everyone on here still typing? But you see all this part is exactly the same as your last program, right? You shouldn't have to type it all in again. This is all the same, except for it's got a break down here at the bottom and your test is down here at the bottom. So this one, the way in Python, which in like C++ you say do, and then down at the bottom you say until, and it actually you say do until. I'll show you here in a minute. I'm going to show you a one that makes more sense where it's not just a break.
So if
Okay.
that break wasn't there, would it just keep going?
Yes. Yeah, we'll try it. We'll do both things. We'll run it several different ways. Okay, so if we run this one the way it is, should print them down to 20. Why did it print to 20? Is that what it was supposed to do? 3, 4, oh no, it's not down to 20. It's just 2 times 20. Okay, so there's that one looks just like our first one, right? Actually, we have 2 other versions like this. Okay, but it broke out at the bottom. So the only way you know it's any different is by looking at the code. Okay, so what Colin just asked is, okay, what if I comment this out? Let's see what happens. Should be an infinite loop. Oh, wait, it won't. It's going to make me put something there. Okay, instead of break, we'll just, yeah, I can say test equals continue. Oh, wait, I'll have to do it like this. Test equals, I'll just have it do something like that because it'll keep printing. I didn't tell it to print it. So see, it's not ever going to stop. So that's because there's not a breakout at the end of the loop. Oops, and there's not a test at the beginning.
So previously we set the limitations in the for loop, and this one just set a limitation by breaking.
That's correct. So then the other thing that I was going to try is let's see, I was going to show you if you put up here, while false, it shouldn't even go through the loop one time. Right? So it stopped at the very top of the loop because that's just the print statement that is right here, right? Before it ever goes in the loop. So if you say while false, then, I mean, at the very beginning, that's saying don't even go through the loop one time. So that's why true and false work in Python. Now I want to show you something though. Look at, let me see if they have it at W3 School. I think they do. I'm not 100% sure. They teach. Well, I think even JavaScript is different. I want to see a for loop in JavaScript. I think it's like, did I pass loops? Come on. There's data types assignment, arrays, dates. There it is, loop. Okay, in a for loop in JavaScript, you can write for, yeah, I see they don't do a break, but I wanted to see if they do for loops through a block of code, for and while, do whiles right here. That's what I want to show you. A do while, which is a post loop. See if I can find one. Statement 2, if you omit statement 2, you must, okay, here's one where you have to put a break inside the loop if you omit statement 2. So here's variable I equals 2, variable length equals cars length, variable text equals spaces 4, and I, as long as I is less than length. Look, they didn't even put the variable there. Increment I, try it for yourself. Okay, let's run it. Oh, it did run sob. Okay, so here's where they did what Tyler did. They initialized an array named cars, and they put values, 4 values in there. They said position 1's BMW in the list. That's position 2, 3, and 4. And then they said, let's set I equal to 2 and length equal to cars.length. So what that does is it automatically calculates the length of the array. So it's going to say length is 4. And so it says 4 length, no, as long as I is less than length. So here it's saying for I, it understands that there's I because that's already the 2. So I is less than length, increment I. So I is going to start with 2. And so it says, is 2 less than length? Yes, it is. Then text plus equal cars I. Anyway, it's already going to add 1 right there. And so it's going to print sob, and then it's going to print forward. But that's different. See how the syntax is a little more difficult in JavaScript than it is in Python? That's why we went back to Python, and that's why they use Python. But in web design, web programming, anything out on the internet, they use JavaScript and jQuery. So it's good to learn some JavaScript. But you can learn all of those at W3 Schools. So the do while, though, is different. That's what I wanted you to see, is that the do while is different than it is in Python. Okay, so we got that one. Nesting loops. Okay, now this is the one like the answer sheet, I believe. Because this has the nested while, I believe it's a while loop. Let me see if they use a nested. Did you do this one, Tyler?
Yeah, this is the one I had trouble on.
Okay, so, oh, everybody had trouble. I remember this one. This one is the same thing as the answer sheet, except it's using stars to be printed out instead, or asterisks, instead of numbers. So what they tell you is write the nested loops to control the number of rows and the number of columns that make up the letter E as shown below. And so they've initialized numbers across to be 3 and numbers down to be 5. And they should have the asterisk, yeah. So here it says write a loop to control the number of rows, which is going to be your outer loop because it's the 5. Then write a loop to control the number of columns, okay? So the number of columns are 3. Then decide when to print an asterisk in every column. So sometimes you print 3 and sometimes you print 1, right? Okay, so what is the name of this one? Letter E, letter E. Okay, then I'm going to give y'all a homework one anyway, so this one I'm giving to you again. So this one, I don't know why everything's in red. Wait a minute. Oh, those were things because I was playing with it, I know, when I was showing it in class. So let me go back here and take that out. Take this out. Otherwise I'll have to go, oops. I think that needs to go in there. Is that the only ones? Nope, here's another one. Else. If I get all the asterisks out correct. Else, print that. Oops. Let me see if that one's right. Hold on. Let me run it and see if I got all the right before you copy it all. Source must be saved. Okay. I missed something. Let me see. Well, it's going to be similar to this anyway. You can start. Why isn't that letting me move it over? It's not letting me move it over. There it is. Maybe there. Let me run it again, see if that was enough over. I don't know. Okay. Oops. This one would be here. Tab. It's gonna have to be there. Tab over. But all of them. I messed up. Okay, try again. Still in the wrong place. Is that still in the wrong place? Or do I need a colon? Which is it? Does there have to be a colon after L, if anybody know? No, it should be at the end. It's not in the right spot, it says. I may have to go back and get the right one. Okay, let's go again. Still missed. I still missed one. Maybe that. Wait a minute. I'm not sure if that's right either. Just a second. An indent does not match. Okay, it's saying maybe this needs to be there. Oops. Maybe that's it. I don't know. Let me see. Nope, it still doesn't like that. So does this go in one? I don't know if it's supposed to be part of that. Okay, here's where I'll go back to. Y'all can see it. Probably in another one. I didn't do that, maybe. I think that was when we were playing with it. Here's how it should be right here. There you go. We won't have time to play with it. No. I put the wrong one in front again. There you go. Is that the right one? Yeah, I think that's the right one. Let me run it and make sure. Yeah, there it is. Okay, that one is the correct one. Now, Tyler may have did it different and got it to work. He got 100%, right? Okay, that's good. Oh, every time I touch anything, it flickers, huh? So this is one way. Just remember, there's always more than one way to do it. 4 row. So this is showing you also with a for loop how you could do it. 4 column. William, did you do it different? Did you make it work? I know you can't see these way back there. Some of them. Can you see them? Yeah. Okay. When I do item. Oh, good. That's good. I sure wish I did. Okay. Print a space instead of an asterisk else. Oh, yeah, we're going to run out of time. So at least you got, this is the hardest one. I think you can get the bottom one, accumulating totals. Wasn't it easier, Tyler? Oh, somebody else did them too. Okay. Yeah, you can take a picture if you want. Yeah. That's so neat. I didn't have that when I was in school. You're writing like crazy trying to take notes. Okay, so what I want you to look for is that I'm going to, because all these have to be done by tonight, and I did the most of them here. So I'm going to give you a problem in homework, but it'll come up as, you know, to do right there. And it'll be a problem with nested loops, okay? And I may give you part of it, but it'll be like one of these. And it's just a homework. It's not a test. It's just a homework. So if you just come close, you get points. So just try it, okay? And so if you want, and even if you do the pseudocode and you don't get the Python to work, that's okay. I just want to see how many really understand the loops, because this is real important before we go on to arrays, that you understand not so much like this one, but like the test answer sheet inside the chapter. This one's a little more confusing with the asterisks, but the one like where it printed the nested loop answer sheet, you need to be able to understand a nested loop, an outer loop and an inner loop, okay? So that's what your problem will have in it. Okay, if you're done with this part and then you're free to go. I'm going to post that out there. It should be out there by tonight sometime, but you'll have until Monday at midnight. But I would appreciate if you try to do it before class, because I want to see how much you know. And then I will also make available the next chapter, which is on arrays, Unit 6, I believe is on arrays, in MindTap, and we'll start on arrays next week. So I need you to really understand loops before we do that. Sometimes we do loops a little bit longer. We might do them a little bit longer because sometimes I do a test over just loops instead of arrays and loops.